Funding for the production of Folks is made possible in part by a grant from Union National Life Insurance, serving Louisiana and the South since 1926, a family-managed corporation providing whole life insurance.
Straight ahead on Folks, why can't Southern University attract white students, and why can't LSU attract black students? This year marks the end of the consent decree for higher education in Louisiana, and both schools have failed to accomplish their desegregation goals. Today we'll take a look at why. We'll also travel to Shreveport to meet filmmaker minister Evelyn Fields Updike. Her movie, Tambia Buri, is gaining national attention, all in today's edition of Folks. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Folks. I'm Sonya Masingale. When the consent decree for desegregating higher education expires at the end of this year, Louisiana's 4 predominantly black universities should have received more than $200 million for the enhancement of faculty, facilities, and campuses to attract more white students. The consent decree also granted several $million to the state's predominantly white universities to increase black enrollment and integrate their faculties. But almost all of the state's universities have failed to meet their desegregation goals. The U.S. Justice Department is not pleased. Today, we're going to talk to students, recruiters, and school officials from Southern University and LSU in Baton Rouge, 2 of the largest universities in the state, to find out why their efforts at desegregation have fallen flat.
LSU recruited me the most. Southern sent me nothing. I put them second on my ACT after LSU. I put SMU, Georgetown after them. Everybody else sent me something, and Southern sent me nothing, and they're like 90 miles from my hometown, and I felt left out as though they didn't want me. I applied for a scholarship on my own, and I didn't receive one. LSU did give me something.
This is Jan Barker, a senior at LSU Baton Rouge. She has been successful academically at LSU, but admits some problems with social isolation at the predominantly white university. Would she support her children's choice of a large white university?
I'd have to think about that. We were just talking a minute ago, and I was saying one reason I didn't choose Southern, I really didn't want to go through the political know-how to get a scholarship. And now, things that I have learned, sometimes I say, well, maybe I should have used my resources. But LSU has given me so many experiences that I know I wouldn't have gotten up there. So I would come back here.
Gail Townsel is also a senior at LSU. She says that she has never even considered a predominantly black school.
My being black hasn't really affected me academically. I'm pretty good in school. The thing that startled me was when I first got here. I walked to class and I sat down, and all of a sudden all these white people came in, and there were no black people in the class except for me. And I was like, well, we're all the black people, but I'd see them walk into class. It's just that when I got to class, there were no black people there. And I felt alienated for a long time, but as time went by, I felt a lot better about it because I did get a chance to meet other black people, and more black people came into the classes that I'm in now, so it's okay.
Jan and Gail are 2 of the growing number of black students who are being aggressively recruited to LSU. LSU began a minority recruitment effort long before the consent decree for higher education made it a mandate. Greg Bryant serves as the minority recruiter for LSU. Here he describes his recruitment techniques.
Well, we really can't reinvent the wheel. I mean, there are just some traditional kinds of recruitment activities that must be done, and from there you can tailor some things that might be a little more specialized, special programs. We probably do more here at LSU than any other school, simply because of the fact that we are LSU. We are the state university. Whether it's black or white students, we tend to be more places and more high schools than the other regional campuses. It doesn't make sense for McNeese to be over in New Orleans trying to attract kids, or for Tech to be, we need to be everywhere. And that's the same case for black students. So not that I do all of it, but by tapping the resources of faculty, both black and white, and staff, both black and white, we feel like we visit more high schools than any other university.
Bryant has recruited black students for 5 years at LSU and says that his job has gotten easier.
I think for a prepared black student, one who is fully prepared to come and take advantage of the state university, it's given me a stronger confidence to go out and actually try to recruit black students. I feel better about it. I have people say things like, how can you recruit black kids to that white university? I think we have to, sooner or later, we're going to get out of the white and the black, and it's a matter of programs. I think you spoke with a young lady a little earlier, Gail Townsel, who from Shreveport, who went initially to Tech because they had a technical writing program. She didn't go there because of this. She went because of the academic program. I think students need to think about what they're spending their money for and make some decisions based upon the commodity in which they're pursuing. So I think this familiarity over 5 years, and then also the fact that there are some sincere people here at LSU, that black students can survive here at LSU, I think encourages me to go out and tell the LSU story.
We depend a great deal on the high school counselors because we realize that ultimately students refer to their high school counselors to ascertain if the college choice they have in mind is one that perhaps their counselor approves of. So it's very important to Southern University for us to educate the high school counselors about what Southern University has to offer.
Gwendolyn Boddie is Director of Recruitment at Southern University. Southern has also fallen short of its desegregation goals. Boddie believes the problem is largely one of image.
Well, number one, whites that we come in contact with simply don't know much about the university. They only hear the negative things about the university. The counselors in the various high schools don't usually say to white students, perhaps you should consider Southern University. Why, I cannot answer right now. We have found that they have simply been directed to other predominantly white universities. However, we are aiming to change that. And that is why I mentioned earlier that we're trying to educate the counselors in the high schools and let them know that Southern can be a viable option for your students. So it's going to take some time, I believe, because we're simply not talking about marketing the university. We're talking about changing folks' attitudes.
I think it's natural that there would have been problems in implementing an agreement of this magnitude and diversity. You must remember that the decree was very, very complex. It addressed some very serious matters relating to the state, and we should have expected that there would have been problems, but also successes.
Wesley McClure is the Chancellor for the Southern University Baton Rouge campus. He feels that Southern has been attempting to carry out the dictates of the consent decree to the letter and in good faith, but the problems may lie in the weakness of the original document.
It would be my judgment that weaknesses are strictly related to the fact that human beings were responsible for drafting the agreement. We had no way of predicting the future. We had no way of knowing what would be the ultimate turnout of economics in the state, nor of the larger turnaround of public policy in the nation. So therefore, we had to make good estimates of what would happen. We had to devise a plan for achieving goals that were very critical to the long-term survival of the state. The problems that were encountered then were directly associated with the fact that man, in his limitations, will always have to make guesses and in the process make mistakes. As we went into the agreement, however, we have made refinements as were appropriate. However, there were some refinements that could not be made because of limited resources and because of other variables that were and are beyond our control. But on balance, we have endeavored to do what was in our power to make sure that the agreement worked and that the citizens of the state would benefit from the programs that are subscribed under the consent decree.
The reason I chose to come to Southern is because, for one thing, it's close. I live in Zachary, and it just takes me 15 minutes to drive to Southern. And the most important reason is because I'm here on the tuition exemption scholarship. Right now, I'm newly married, or newlywed, and I can't afford to go to LSU or, you know, any colleges that are further out in Louisiana.
Kim Halladay-Corbin is a freshman at Southern. She has found that Southern is an affordable and challenging educational choice.
Do you feel that you're getting a good quality education here at Southern?
Before I came, my sister-in-law comes also to Southern. She goes to the nursing school. She's majoring as an RN. And I asked her if she felt that the education was up to par with the rest of the universities, such as the majority white universities. And she said that yes, it is. And I've realized that the classes are challenging, and where I thought that they might be easier, you know, since usually the majority black universities or maybe the black schools, elementary or whatever, you know, I was bused to Crestworth, I thought that they would be lowered to the standards of black people, thinking that, you know, that their standards were lower. But in reality, you find more people, the people whose standards are lowered, whether they're black or white, you find them failing more or else having to retake their courses instead of, you know, the standards being lowered for them. The standards are basically the same everywhere.
How did your friends react when you told them that you were planning to attend Southern University?
Anywhere you go to college, at least you're getting an education. It doesn't matter where you're going or if it's majority black, you know. It doesn't really matter, just so long as you're getting an education so that whenever you get out of college, you can get a job more easily, since, you know, when they look at a resume or whatever and they see that college education, that's who they can take first. But then some of my friends, I don't know, it seems like, you know, some might be prejudiced, and they say, well, you're going to a school with all black people, don't you feel funny, one of the fewer white people there? I said no, because, you know, since I've been going, everybody just treats me like everybody else.
Southern has increased its white enrollment by about 5%, but desegregation is a slow process at this historically black institution for many reasons.
We're talking history. It is a part of the culture of this nation that there was not only a separation of the races, but there was a perception of blacks as inferior, and a perception that blacks, the behavior of blacks would just not be that which any group would want to be associated with. It takes time to correct those views and perceptions. 300 to 400 years of one perception cannot be erased in a few years. But working together, I'm totally convinced that these perceptions can be erased. And as these perceptions are erased, there will be a greater acceptability of Southern University and black people in general in the total fabric of the world.
Earlier this year, the Justice Department reported that compliance to consent decree efforts are failing. There's little time left to do anything about it. Joining me in the studio to discuss the situation is Mr. Albert Clary. Mr. Clary is the Executive Assistant to the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, or he's recently retired and is continuing on a volunteer basis to work with the administration of the consent decree at LSU. Welcome to Folks.
Thank you.
With the last official report coming from the Justice Department being on the negative side, have they said anything positive about LSU's efforts?
The report of the Justice Department dealt with the negative aspects of the consent decree. Actually, many of the goals of the consent decree have been met, and significant progress has been made on many other goals.
Can you bring us up to date with what's happening at LSU and according to their consent decree goals?
Well, we have continued to make a very extensive effort in meeting the goals. We've put in a great deal of energy and money into this effort, and we made substantial progress. We feel that we were carrying out the spirit of the consent decree.
How about on the faculty goals? Have you increased those numbers at all?
Yes, we've met the faculty goals. That's one thing that, one goal that we definitely have exceeded is the faculty goal. And another one that we've met and exceeded is the faculty exchange goal, where LSU is required to have 20 faculty members teaching at Southern University each year, and Southern is required to have 10 at LSU. And this has been exceeded almost every year.
Thank you, Mr. Clary. I appreciate your candid answers, and I wish you the best of luck in your retirement and your volunteering with LSU.
Thank you.
Our next story features Evelyn Fields Updike of Shreveport. Her screenplay production, Tambia Buri, recently placed fourth in the 1987 Black Filmmakers Hall of Fame competition. Now, she had never worked in film before, yet she managed to write a screenplay, assemble a cast, produce, direct. She wrote and performed the soundtrack and acted in her own film.
In a bizarre martial arts style killing, which has left this neighborhood in terror, one of its young residents was killed last Wednesday.
Oh. Zach, how could you bring yourself to do such a story?
Well, I know it's frightening, honey, but unfortunately it's a reality of life. And that's what makes the news.
Tambia Buri is a soap opera-style film. The plot centers around the age-old conflict of good and evil, as well as the supernatural dealings of the Duprees, a wealthy New Orleans family. The movie is based upon a novel by the same name, due to be released soon. Here, its writer and producer, Evelyn Fields Updike, tells us why she wrote and produced Tambia Buri.
I wanted to do something different, something that kind of captured the beautiful, spiritual, psycho-religious elements of the South and projected it in a positive light. It kind of explored our cultural plurality, while at the same time lifting African Americans in the South above those stereotypical images. And Tambia Buri provided me with that. It's a theme about an old house and, of course, a family, a very wealthy family of blacks who have a history of involvement in the supernatural. So it provided me with that atmosphere that I needed.
Updike, mother of 7 children, budding novelist and filmmaker, is also the minister of a full gospel church. She does not feel that there is any conflict between her occupations. However, Tambia Buri deals with voodoo as well as sex outside of marriage. How has she managed to keep her artistic as well as her spiritual integrity intact?
Naturally, we've had some friction there and some negative reaction because of the failure to understand that it's not necessarily a glorification of voodoo. It's just an exploration of it. It's part of our culture, and there has been a tendency among African Americans to try and detach themselves from that spiritual element of our culture. It's fascinating, although it's only been associated with the negative. Tambia Buri deals with it in a more refined and positive way. It's none of the usual primitive hogwash that you see, cutting chickens' heads off and all that kind of stuff.
There's sex in Tambia Buri as well, discreet sex, but sex. Once again, how did you handle that as a minister?
Obviously, there's good and there's evil, as in the novel, you've got protagonists, but you've also got antagonists. And of course, drama is conflict. You also got to have pro and con. We deal with Satan, we deal with sin, we deal with bad, and we deal with good. And it's there. Sex is a part of reality, and the exploitation of it is as well. So as long as it's not that glorifying and projecting it as being right or wrong, just presenting it there and allowing people to draw their own conclusions from that, we didn't receive too much negative criticism from that.
Updike did receive some criticism for Tambia Buri's non-political plot. the blacks in her film are not defined through their relationships to whites.
The distinction between Tombia Burrie and some of your quote-unquote black films is the fact that these are very real people in very human situations. They are people dealing with human conflicts, dealing with one another, relating to each other as people, and not necessarily as black people in black situations. Every film that we produce does not necessarily have to deal with race or racial conflicts or black versus white. There are some entertaining films that can be made simply dealing with us as people in human situations.
Producing movies and writing novels are more than hobbies for Updike, and even if her story ideas are not political, her motives are.
Of the 6,500 members of the Writers Guild of America, who are largely responsible for what we see in films, less than 130 are black. Of the dozen or so soap operas, only 10 blacks are under contract. I mean, less than 5% of all roles in cinema, in television alike, are held by black women. Less than 10% by black men. That's appalling. It's disturbing considering the immense talent that we have out there. So that's been the concern behind Spike, whom I spoke with at the Hall of Fame Oscar Michelle celebrations in Oakland. Glenn Turman. There was just a gala celebration with a number of very well-known people in the business. We were all echoing the same thing. It's time that blacks rise up and not in a manner of protesting so much as saying we have a story to tell and we have something to share, something to contribute, and it's time that we do it.
Updike has founded the Black Filmmakers Society of Louisiana. The members of her production company and the cast of the film are also heavily involved with advocating independent ventures into the film industry.
The fact that in order to generate more filmmakers locally, that we have to get the point across that you don't need millions of dollars to make a good quality film. Too much of what we see in films today is all laser beams and high tech. Yeah. And that, I think, kind of turns everybody off. You just need talent and sheer determination.
This closely knit group has also shared many light moments during the making of the film.
We needed a wind machine, and we could not get the thing there to work. And it just so happened that God smiled on us. And at the exact moment that we needed that big gust of wind, all of a sudden on the set, and everybody went, oh, you know, there's this big, furious gust of wind that came up. And the cute and interesting thing is that when this film premiered in Oakland, and Spider turns when he's going to do his little duel with Zach, and this gust of wind comes up, everybody goes, wow, what a tough wind machine she had, you know. The real thing is that the wind machine was heaven sent.
For a better look at Tombia Burrie, here are some key scenes from the movie.
In 7 days, the moon will be full. On the 7th day, the avenging spit will come to seek out the firstborn. If the blood ceremony has been performed, the spirit will anoint the firstborn, or the one who takes his place, with great power. If the spirit does not receive the offering of blood, then he will take terrible vengeance.
No. I have chosen my own weapon.
I see.
And consecrated it.
Well, at midnight, when the moon is full and the spirit comes, the weapon must be plunged into the heart of the firstborn while he wears the Sheamus medallion. When his blood flows, the power will pass from him to you.
Spider, don't hurt him. Spider, don't hurt him, okay? Spider, look at me.
Watch this.
But why? What has he done to make you hate him so much?
He was born.
No. No, Rick, don't do it. Don't do it.
You're a minister, filmmaker, writer, and a mother of 7. Where do you find the time for all of that?
It's not easy. It requires a lot of support and a lot of juggling. But I somehow, with God's help, manage to do it. It's not easy.
Tambia will premiere in Japan later on this year. And that's it for this week's program. Be sure to join us next week for another edition of Folks. Bye-bye.
Funding for the production of Folks is made possible in part by a grant from Union National Life Insurance, serving Louisiana and the South since 1926, a family-managed corporation providing whole life insurance.